side. So the costs have been real. When you tally it all up, and we don't know the full security costs yet, and in fact we will never know the complete cost, because all levels of government are remarkably good at hiding the costs. So the ones that have been ferreted out so far tell us that with security, which is probably going to be $1 billion, it's what one of my colleagues, Garth Mullins, calls user pay police state, we are going to pay $1 billion to have our city locked down in 2010, for 51 days, by the way. The overall cost of the Olympic Games will be somewhere between $6 and $10 billion. That's a lot of money. So we can think about that in terms of waste. You can try to think about that in terms of lost opportunity cost. What would $6 to $10 billion do for poverty in the city? What would it do for healthcare? What would it do for biomedical research? Most of the people in this room, when they get old enough, are going to die of one of three things. You're going to die of cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurological disease. That's just the odds. Any of those could be prevented in your future if any government would put in $6 billion. Any of them. They choose not to do it. It's not a priority. So there's enormous real costs. There's a real cost to real people. You don't have to walk far from here to see the poverty in the city. We have estimated 3,000 homeless people. That's probably an underestimate. The numbers are probably vastly higher. As one of my colleagues was saying, they're just counting the people on the streets. They're not counting the people that are couch surfing in friends' apartments that are just a paycheck away from being on the streets. They're not counting the working poor. And they probably have undercounted the numbers altogether. Huge number of people in the city that are poor and are living on the streets. And what has the new Vancouver city government done? Well, they created a team to study it. Great. And will it be solved by 2010? No. Will it be solved after 2010? No. And we know what they're going to tell us after 2010. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. After 2010, they'll say, gee, that village thing cost us so much money. The security for Vancouver police cost us so much money. We'd love to help those poor people, but we don't have the money. We just can't.
Well, this tableau is meant to raise to awareness in a creative way the inconsistencies, the incongruities of the Olympics. On the one hand, saying it's the greenest games ever. On the other hand, mowing down forests, 100,000 trees, some old-growth forests, arbutus trees, habitat for various kind of species, carbon emissions into the air from the airplanes, and so on and so on. And here we are presenting it still, the Olympic organizers presenting it still as if it's the greenest game ever. We have to raise awareness of the sham that it is and bring into public awareness the incongruities, and that's what this tableau is all about.
And to suggest that Vancouver is somehow unique and it's only happened here, it's not true. They simply don't care. And the reason is because they never care. This happens in every city, time after time after time. It's always the poor that are being displaced. It's always the environment that's being trashed. It's always the costs that go through the roof. Costs, for example, London was estimated initially to be about $4 billion. That's converting from sterling. It's now $19 billion. Oh, whoops. It's not an accident. These things, they don't care. Once the machine is in motion, they don't care because they've got a contract. The IOC has a contract with your city and your province, and you are going to pay, if you're foolish enough to do it, whatever the costs are to stage the games.
Hi, my name is Melody Blaney. I'm here representing Citizens United to Save the Peace. BC Hydro is sponsoring the 2010 Olympics by providing what they call green power. So while they try and make things appear that way, they're hoping that no one will notice them destroying a river valley by building the Site C Dam on the Peace River. The Site C Dam would flood over 100 kilometers of 3 different river valleys, plus several streams and creeks. It would destroy half of the Peace River in BC. The Peace River Valley is home to some of the best wildlife habitat in the province. The only Class 1 farmland in northern BC. It's a spectacularly beautiful valley, and all that would be lost if Site C is allowed to proceed. The area to be flooded is traditional First Nations territory. The Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative has noted the Peace Break region as an area of special concern within the Y2Y wildlife corridor. The reservoir that would be created by Site C would extend nearly completely across the Peace Break region of the corridor. So if animals could not or would not cross the reservoir, Site C would essentially sever the Y2Y wildlife corridor. Site C would produce 140,000 tons of CO2 equivalent every year in the form of methane from rotting vegetation. That's the equivalent of putting over 25,600 vehicles on BC roads. We don't have to let this happen, though. We can stand united to save our waterways across the province and leave a legacy that will make our children proud of what we stood for. We can say no to destroying valleys for Olympic power.
But this on Earth Day, let's do an evaluation and say, what have the Olympics done to our province over the last 7 years? And remember, we were promised that these would be the greenest games ever. In 1994, the IOC passed what they called their third pillar of Olympism. The first was, of course, sports, elite sports. The second one was cultural development. And the third was environmental sustainability. And we were billed as going to be the greenest games ever. If you're massive loss of trees was not the only thing that happened in Callahan. And it's not the only thing that's going to happen in Callahan, because they're actually talking about creating legacy trails. Legacy trails were supposed to be a wonderful thing that has left over after the games have come and gone. So they're actually talking about creating something like 100 kilometers of legacy trails. So we really don't know how many trees are going to fall before it's all done. And what that accomplishes is it divides the valley into just so happens to be kind of almost market lot sized chunks. Isn't that clever? And so the original 2002 BidCorps plan seems to be coming true. They've been negotiating with the First Nations band to build a golf course there. There are negotiations ongoing to build hotels there. Whistler denies they're going to build any housing there, but that's now. Who knows what's going to happen after 2010? They've basically taken this valley, and it wasn't perfect, but it was largely untouched, and they've made it the future Whistler.